Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Pathways of Light Miracle Network meditation gathering. I'm so glad you're all here to share this time together. This week we have Kirsty Randle who will lead us in meditation, and then we're going to have 20 minutes of silence. And after that, we'll open it up for sharing, and we end at 10:45. Over to you, Kirsty.
Thank you, Dan, and good morning, everybody. It's absolutely lovely to be here today to share this meditation with you. I'm normally the one reading out the confidentiality agreement, so it's absolutely lovely to be able to share my favourite lesson with everybody today, which is lesson 69, My Grievances Hide the Light of the World in Me. And this is a lesson I've been focusing on very diligently for the past few weeks. And just in the past couple of days, I've really been reflecting on this, me saying that this is my favourite lesson. And actually, I've asked myself, is it really my favourite lesson when I'm talking about me, Kirsty, this separated individual self who believes myself to be a mother, a woman, or is it not actually my favourite lesson? And I've had to come to the conclusion that really, from a separated perspective, it isn't my favourite lesson at all. It's probably my least favourite lesson because it's absolutely the most challenging lesson I've ever done. I was working with lesson 68, Love Holds No Grievances. And I was working, that's the lesson where you check your mind for all the people that you hold grievances against, and you go through them one by one, giving them blessings and forgiving them. And I was working very hard on this lesson. And one day, Holy Spirit came through to me in language, and it very, very rarely comes through to me using language. Normally it's thoughts and feelings. But the message he gave me was very, very clear. He said, child, which is what he calls me when he does come through in language, this lesson is not going to lead you to the light of who you are. You need to do lesson 69. And if you do it twice a day, exactly as I tell you to do it in the book, then I will lead you to your awakening. And I thought, well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Holy Spirit. I'll take you up on that. That's what I'll do. And I thought it was just going to be a very simple case of switching from one lesson to another. And what I discovered was that I wasn't going to my meditation bench anything like as much as I used to. I was having to force myself to get there. And I was nowhere near as present with this lesson as I was with lesson 68. Lesson 69, I'm sure we're all very familiar with it. It's the one where you imagine your mind as a great circle and all the clouds around it, and the meditation is the guided meditation, which I will be leading you through in a moment, is to go through the clouds and into the light and remember the truth of who you are. And I was finding that as I was going into this, I was getting very, very distracted by anxiety thoughts. You know, have I left my car door open? Is my laptop on the passenger seat? Then I was getting thoughts about what I've got to do in the rest of the day. And then I was getting grievance thoughts coming up. And all these people who in lesson 68 I blessed with peace and joy and friendship were all coming at me in lesson 69. And I was having grievance thoughts and attack thoughts. And so I said to Holy Spirit, look, lesson 69 isn't actually working for me very well. Let's just go back to lesson 68, shall we? That's much more my lesson. And the message from Holy Spirit was very, very clear. And it was, lesson 69 is your lesson. And the obstacles that you are encountering in this lesson are actually the path that you need to go through. And the clouds that you are actually going through in the visualization, these are the attack thoughts, these are the fear thoughts, because of course, as I realize now, the ego, my individual separated self, does not want me to get there, and it's putting up an enormous fight to stop me from getting there. And lesson 68 is a very valid lesson, and it's in the book for a reason, but in my particular case, my personal case, Holy Spirit had noticed something that I hadn't, which was that I had put my ego completely in charge of that lesson. I was offering all these people forgiveness as they were coming through to me and thinking I was doing a great job of it, but actually I had cast myself as his grand inquisitor in the meditation, in a classic case of forgiveness to destroy. And that's why I thought I was doing so well at it, because my ego wasn't at all threatened. But with this lesson, I find myself very uncomfortable, very much in fear. And this is why I have to go through it with Holy Spirit and sit with all the attack thoughts that come up, all the fear thoughts, all the distractions, sit with them. And these are the clouds that we're trying to get through. And there is a promise in this lesson. And the promise that we're given is that we will feel ourselves lifted up. And I was thinking, well, I'm not feeling myself lifted up here. It really isn't working. But what I noticed was when I actually sat with these thoughts and recognized them for what they were, which was the ego attacking me and trying to stop me from doing it. And as I sat with them and saw them for what they were, I did actually manage to move myself through them. And that is the point at which I finally felt myself lifted up. And so I'm going to lead everybody through this meditation, part of it. And what I would invite everybody to do during this meditation is to really notice any attack thoughts, any fear thoughts, any distractions, any irritations that actually arise to try and pull you away from the actual purpose of what we're doing here, which is trying to find our true identity as the Christ, as the light of the world, which is the real purpose of life itself. It's the only thing here that we're trying to do. And sit, rather than getting pulled away by these attack thoughts, actually sit with them and notice them for what they are, and see if we can finally reach that stage where we do get lifted up. So I'm just going to go through this meditation here. I'll read it out, and at the end of it we're going to go into silence, and Sharon will ding us in and out of that. So very quietly now, with your eyes closed, try to let go of all the content that generally occupies your consciousness. Think of your mind as a vast circle surrounded by a layer of heavy, dark clouds. You can see only the clouds because you seem to be standing outside the circle and quite apart from it. From where you stand, you can see no reason to believe there is a brilliant light hidden by the clouds. The clouds seem to be the only reality. They seem to be all there is to see. Therefore, you do not attempt to go through them and past them, which is the only way in which you would really be convinced of their lack of substance. We will make this attempt today. After you have thought about the importance of what you are trying to do for yourself and the world, try to settle down in perfect stillness, remembering only how much you want to reach the light in you today, now. Determine to go past the clouds. Reach out and touch them in your mind. Brush them aside with your hand. Feel them resting on your cheeks and forehead and eyelids as you go through them. Go on. Clouds cannot stop you. If you are doing the exercises properly, you will begin to feel a sense of being lifted up and carried ahead. Your little effort and small determination call on the power of the universe to help you. And God himself will raise you from darkness into light. You are in accord with his will. You cannot fail because your will is his. Have confidence in your Father today and be certain that he has heard you and answered you. You may not recognize his answer yet, but you can indeed be sure that it is given you and you will yet receive it. Try as you attempt to go through the clouds to the light. to hold this confidence in your mind. Try to remember that you are at last joining your will to God's. Try to keep the thought clearly in mind that what you undertake with God must succeed. Then let the power of God work in you and through you, that His will and yours be done.
Open your eyes slowly and come back into the room. We have approximately 18 minutes left for sharing your reflections and your questions. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand, or you can use at the bottom of your screen is a participants button, and at the bottom of that screen, you'll see a hand that you can raise, and I'll take you off of mute. And if you'd like to ask a question or have a comment with confidentiality, you could put your message in the chat function at the bottom of the screen, and then Kirsty can read it out. Over to you.
I think it's Anne's got a question there.
Where's that? Who's that?
Anne Coalfield.
Anne. Oh, yeah, you're hidden up by the box. Hello, Anne. Go ahead. Oh, hold on, let me get you off mute. There you go.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yes, good.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Kirsty. Unbelievably. Exactly the same thing going on for me with that lesson, other than, you know, like every time I come up to it, it's like, oh no. So it was just beautiful to hear you say, oh, you know what Holy Spirit had showed you and told you. Unfortunately, you know, that really fired me up, or it fired the ego up in me, who knows. But yeah, I just felt really, I went through every emotion in that, but I didn't feel any lighter. I didn't, you know, I didn't move through or yeah. So I'm still feeling a bit frustrated with that, and yeah. So it's like a double-edged sword really for me. It's like, and then, oh, sort of feeling. So I don't know if you can speak to that, Kirsty, at all.
Yes, thank you, Anne, for that. And I absolutely love your honesty there. I absolutely love and honour your honesty there, because that's where I am all the time. And I hear a lot of feedback from people who say, I saw the light and I was basking in the light and it was wonderful. And I'm sitting there thinking, what's the matter with me? I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. And this is what I've heard Ken Wapnick say it, or I've read Ken Wapnick write it, and it certainly resonates with me. If you are feeling frustration and fear and trauma and all these negative emotions that you're describing in the meditation, it means that you're doing something right, because the ego realizes that there's something threatening going on here, and the ego will put up resistance, and whatever that resistance may be. And when I first started doing lesson 69, I've been doing it for years, and for the most part of my practice, the clouds were just that. They were just clouds. And clouds don't have any particular, they don't hold any fear for me. I don't have a neurosis about clouds. And I was working my way through the clouds, and I'm in the light, and how nice. That worked. But now these clouds, now I'm really, really working with Holy Spirit, and Holy Spirit's coming through. These clouds aren't just clouds, they're fear. They are real fear that's actually relevant to me and my life and my ego. It's, you know, things like, you know, oh, am I going to be one of the 0.07% of people who have a blood clot with the AstraZeneca vaccine? Or, you know, am I going to get, you know, things like that, they will come up for me, so that it's more than clouds now. And this is what Holy Spirit has said to me, this is where the rubber meets the road for you. This is, you know, this is where you're actually working the course. You've been reading it and teaching it and writing about it for years and years and years, and now it's time you actually started working it, my child. And this is where the fear is really coming up, and the feeling of being lifted up at the end of, if you do manage to just for one moment see the, whatever it is for you, whatever, everybody has their own personal triggers, whatever they may be. If you see this personal trigger pressing on your mind and really making you want to leave the room and go and turn on the television or pour a glass of wine or something, if you can actually sit with that and realize that it is just a cloud, it is just a cloud, and get to the other side of that. And it takes a lot of practice, a huge amount of practice to do, a lot of courage to do it, a lot of dedication. And Holy Spirit says something in the book, and it doesn't, you have to really work it to understand what it means. But it says something about your little effort and small determination call on the power of the universe to help you, and God himself will raise you from darkness into light. And for years I've been thinking, well, this is my little effort and this is my small determination. Here I am, God, now you do the rest. This is it, now you do your bit, please. But that isn't little effort and it isn't small determination. That is the ego taking control of the situation, the ego wanting to be in control, because that's its big trick, to be in control of the spiritual path. Yes, we'll do a Course in Miracles, that's fine, I've got no issue with that, but I'm in charge. And the small determination, the little effort, is when you actually start to work with Holy Spirit and realize this is the ego. This is the ego, and it is just a cloud, and we'll go beyond it. So I can see, Anne, that you're feeling a certain amount of distress and here. And for me, that's wonderful. And I know that sounds callous, but it means that there is stuff that you are really bringing up for healing. You're not taking a spiritual bypass. You're really working it. It's really coming up for healing. I know you, Anne, and we've met, and we've had lots of conversations. And I know that you're a very, very dedicated student of the course, like I am. And it is amazing when you realise that you can be an absolutely dedicated student of the course for years and years and years and not do any work. Not actually do it. I'm not speaking about you, I'm speaking about myself. But it is amazing to realise how many workshops you can go to and run, how many articles you can write, and still not actually give Holy Spirit that little effort and small determination that he needs in order to lift you up out of it. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsty. It's really helpful. And the tears are coming, but it just feels like, whew, just a release. It feels okay. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Angela and Terry?
Yeah. Oh, I thought I'd lowered the hand now. No hand. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Kirsty, and hi, everybody.
Hi.
I had a mixed experience. I think I did get a glimmer at the end, but I did picture, of course, that it's a very familiar exercise that I've done over the years, and yes, with mixed results. But I think I have certain people in my life, I think I've spoken of them before, triggers, and I always think of what you said, Dan. Your triggers are your treasures, so I do cling to that. But what I could see them in front of all the clouds, and I headed towards them, and they actually had the substance of clouds. I just walked through them as though they were clouds instead of solid objects, which they appear to be. I did keep nodding off as well. Terry was nudging me. Every now and again, I think I'd fall asleep and come back again. But I was still going through the clouds. And when I got to the centre, I did have shafts of light coming from me, but that was right at the very end. So I didn't have time to really revel in that. It was very rewarding. Thank you very much, Kirsty, for taking us through that. Rewarding because it also brings up the blocks, not just to bring the light, but to bring up the blocks, which is what Course in Miracles is all about. And you mentioned Ken Wapnick, and I always remember him saying, to those people who don't experience blocks, who don't want to bring up their blocks, or who just head straight for the visualizing light and wonder and joy and peace, then probably the Course in Miracles is not for you, because it's all about bringing up the blocks. It's a certain way of doing it, isn't it? The Course in Miracles claims to save us thousands of years by actually going and being with that darkness, those blocks. It's a particular way of a particular path, and that's what Ken Wapnick always says. If that isn't for you, if you don't want to be in the dark, in your darkness, and be familiar with your darkness, it's probably not for you, A Course in Miracles. So so I thought that was very valid. And going back to what Anne was saying, it's reassuring then. In that case, Ken would say it's reassuring, your experiences, Anne, as Kirsty said. Anyway, so there's me done. Thank you very much. It was very helpful. Thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you very much for that, Angela. And yes, I think you were probably referring to the same thing that Ken Wapnick said that I was referring to. A lot of people, well, certainly myself, in my own experience of life, since I've picked up the course and since I started doing the course, my life has changed enormously, and not from the outside necessarily for the better. Things have arisen in my life which have kind of deconstructed the old world to make way for the new. And it's all the stages that you go through are all written out in the stages of development of trust. Most of those stages in the development of trust are actually quite dark. It's not all, I think there's 2 stages, 4 and 6, where it's a bit of love, peace and joy, but the other 4 are all pretty murky, really, and you do have to go through that. It is a path where you do encounter your own darkness. You do encounter your own ego, and you look at the ego and you realize that actually there is no ego. There is no ego. There is only the light. But you have to actually go through. You have to actually go through the path, and it does seem to get darker and darker and darker at times.
And I think we have to realize it's treasures. Those are the gems. Those are the things. Oh, look, here's something that needs healing. And it could be a celebratory thing, but instead we think something's gone wrong. But it's not gone wrong, it's gone right.
It's gone right from the view of Holy Spirit, absolutely. But from the view of the ego, the ego can absolutely catastrophize. And what I've noticed looking back on my life is that I've stumbled many, many, many times on this journey. I've had many, many stumbles, but I've never actually fallen. And that is a promise that's made in the course, and it's also made throughout the Bible, that we stumble, but we do not fall as long as we hold Jesus' hand. And I've had situations in my life where I think, how on earth has this happened? How on earth has this come up in my life? How on earth did I create this one? And the temptation of the ego is to cast me as a victim. I'm a victim of this frightening world. But of course, by carrying on with trust and faith throughout the journey, then looking back, and I have to look back retrospectively on this, I don't necessarily see it at the time. I think, my goodness, what a miracle. That was such a miracle. There was something there that did not come from the normal world of the senses. There was something absolutely miraculous there. And I really am being carried here. So it's certainly, it doesn't have to be a difficult journey, but it is. That's how it's experienced.
Yeah, that's what it says actually in the course, doesn't it? It doesn't have to be through pain, but it is usually so experienced.
Yeah, and I think Jesus is being kind there when he says it's usually so experienced, because I don't know of anybody who doesn't experience, who's really working it, who doesn't experience it, doesn't experience the difficulties that come up. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for that question, Angela.
I have a comment in chat. It says, lovely to hear you talk, Kirsty, and be so present with what is. I see you shining.
Oh, thank you very much to whoever that was.
confidential.
I think Lynn had a question there.
Yes, thanks, Kirsty. That was, I've done it many times, but it was an interesting journey this time. And what I noticed is that determination which we're asked to have, how easily that turns to the or seemingly to the advantage of ego, because then I was sort of trying to take control and then relaxing back into letting go of that, trying to take control, trying to get through these dark clouds. And then at one point, there was a car alarm started to go off outside. So that kind of alerted me to the grievances. And in the end, it was a sort of just drifting in and out of this determination, relaxation, letting go. But I didn't get anywhere, that the dark clouds were just there right throughout. But having said that, another opportunity to just have that, okay, this time it was a bit different than it has been before. So, thank you for your observations and your comments. So that's been great so far. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Lynn. Thank you. And it does say in as part of this lesson, have confidence in your Father today and be certain that he has heard you and answered you. You may not recognize his answer yet, but you can indeed be sure that it's given you and you will yet receive it. And so none of this is wasted. I'm like you, Lynn. I'm always in the dark clouds. I'm never standing in the beautiful light of truth. It's all the dark clouds don't tend to move for me. But nevertheless, we can't know from our own ego mind what's going on. We can't evaluate our progress. It says somewhere in the course, some of your greatest setbacks are your greatest stride. I can't remember the exact quote, but we have got no way of knowing. But even though you were in the clouds there, nevertheless, you made that effort, you made that determination, and your call will be answered in a way that you cannot expect, because no little effort is wasted. And I hear what you say about how it gives way, this determination thing is of the will. It is that ego. It does lend itself to the ego. And this is where I find that having Holy Spirit, having a sense of the presence of Holy Spirit somewhere, a really visceral sense of Holy Spirit or Jesus or some kind of higher guide in your mind is really, really important, because I would never, ever have known that my lesson 68, assiduous lesson 68 practice, I would never have known that that was not really working it, because as far as I was concerned, I was doing great. I was really going for it. And it took Holy Spirit to just cut in with actual language. No, this is not, this is the ego. And I wouldn't have known otherwise. That's how cunning, that's how incredibly cunning and crafty the ego can actually be. So yes, I'm really thank you, Lynn. I have to say to everybody, I'm really, really thoroughly enjoying everybody's honesty with the feedback today. It's so wonderful to hear everybody talking about the actual struggles that they encounter with the course. It's very, very refreshing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, take yourself off of mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Kirsty. That was very, very reassuring for me, because I always feel as if I must be doing something wrong because I never quite get into the light. So that today has been exactly what I needed to hear. And what happened for me, I never got to the light, but I became aware of the forgiveness issues that I thought I had dealt with were kind of floating back in again, just like clouds. But they weren't quite as heavy as they used to be. So I just wonder, is that normal? That, these same issues with the same people keep coming up again and again and again. But altogether, I just found this to be really reassuring, and I will go away from this feeling encouraged. So thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you very much for that, Jenny. And in answer to your question, is that normal? I don't know, Jenny. I really don't know. I don't think there is a normal. I really don't think there is a normal. Everybody, you know, everybody's spirit is one. We are one. But the ego, everybody's ego is different. There's so many different flavors of ego. There's so many different life experiences. Everybody's got their different edges. Everybody's got their different fixed points. And Holy Spirit, this is why I think, I mean, we all have teachers of Course in Miracles who we relate to and we go to and we attend classes with, who are very, very helpful in our lives. They come and they go. But there's only really one teacher of Course in Miracles, and that's Holy Spirit. And it's about going to Holy Spirit and asking Holy Spirit, you know, what is this? What gives? And it will be normal, Jenny. There's no way that you can be possibly doing it wrong. But as I can say, you know, Holy Spirit will give individual guidance to different people in different ways. And some people, like myself, for example, used to get incredibly frustrated by this. I can't hear Holy Spirit. There's no point in going to Holy Spirit if I don't hear him. But actually, Holy Spirit will get through if you really, really want to hear. And it becomes the most important thing to you, then Holy Spirit will get through. And whichever way Holy Spirit can get through to you, whichever way you're willing to listen, Holy Spirit will get through to you. That's what I would say. So whatever you've done today, Jenny, and no matter how you evaluate it in your mind, the one thing is for sure, and that's that you've done something. You've turned to Holy Spirit, and you will get an answer at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your question.
Any more questions? Linda.
Hi, Kirsty. That's a really hard lesson. I find that lesson one of my hardest. And what I've got is grievances, to remove them. And I held a grievance against my dad for 64 years. And it's only just in the last fortnight that I've seen it as an opportunity to get me to where I am now, through forgiveness, and to see it differently. And I've had another one from an old, I was manager and he was the owner, thought he owned me and could tell me exactly what to do, get me in there 24 hours a day. He didn't own me, so I left. I had so many opportunities after that, to feel loved, that I was being guided. But I found it very, very difficult to forgive him for treating me like he did. And then I felt like I was a victim for allowing it. And then there's blame and judgment. So all these things come up. And eventually, just recently again, I've managed to forgive Richard. However, I thought I'd forgiven my ex-husband for trying to poison me and all the things I went through with that. And that's come up even harder now. And I think I haven't really forgiven him, because the repercussions of my children are giving me so much heartache. Or putting the blame on my ex-husband again. So I'm thinking I'm doing really well, and then this comes up. So not just like my ex-husband, I've got 4 children I have to forgive. This one, you've definitely put a trigger. You're the trigger, Kirsty.
Sorry, Linda.
But I know it's an opportunity to have a really good look at it. So I just wanted to say, yes, thank you for allowing all this to be brought to the surface, for me to go through the clouds and to the light. So that's what I wanted to say, Kirsty. Thank you for bringing it all up, shifting it all up, all the muck. Thank you, I'm out.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, and I think your question or your feedback there has really spoken to Jenny's question that she asked me before, which was, is that normal? Is it normal to have forgiveness coming up but slightly weaker and not quite as strong? And what you're experiencing here, it sounds to me, is that you feel that you're forgiving and you feel that it's getting weaker, but then it's coming back and it's stronger. And we just don't know. My view is we just don't know. And it is impossible to forgive one person. We cannot forgive one person and not another. We either forgive or we don't. And when we truly forgive, we forgive the world and we forgive ourselves. So this is why it's not really quite correct to say, I've forgiven my father, but I haven't forgiven my ex-husband. However, as I understand it works, we use these people as forgiveness opportunities. Holy Spirit uses individual people in our lives. You know, ex-husbands, parents and children are, of course, the real biggies, and bosses as well. These are the real biggies in our lives. And he uses these people so we can practice forgiveness. And if we constantly use these people that come up in our lives as forgiveness opportunities, then one day is the promise, we will step into that forgiveness, which is called awakening. That is awakening from the dream of separation and realizing, not just in our heads, I mean, everyone on this call, everyone on this Zoom knows, because we're all Course in Miracles students, we know that this world is a dream. But as Helen Schuckman said, you know, who scribed the course, she knows it's true. She knows it's true, but she just doesn't believe it. And I don't think she ever believed it. And it's not that she was skeptical about it, it's that she was aware that that knowledge hadn't yet reached her heart. It's a bit of a cliche, but you know, the longest journey in the world is 17 inches between the head and the heart. And that's what we're talking about here. And every time we do turn in forgiveness towards a father, a brother, a sister, a child, and we do genuinely ask for forgiveness and give her that little bit of willingness, then we inch forward slowly. And our processes are all very, very individual. So thank you for that, Linda.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Catherine.
Thank you, Kirsty. It was me who said, I see you shining.
Oh, I thought it was you, Catherine. It sounded like you, but I didn't want to say it out loud because it was a confidential chat function.
The chat says it's for everyone at the moment. It's not confidential.
Oh, right. Okay. I hadn't noticed that. Okay.
Yeah, it may be me with my wandering mind, but I wasn't clear on, I was very clear you had this revelation from Holy Spirit, that you hadn't been giving the little effort or the little willingness, and I wonder if you could speak to that again, because I wasn't sure what the insight was.
Yeah, what the lesson 68, as I'm sure everybody or most people know this one, is that you search your mind for people who you have a grievance against, and then you bless them with I will see you as my friend, that I may remember you a part of me and come to know myself. And I had this whole, I can only really describe it as a perp walk of people coming up, all the people who I had a grievance against coming through me, and I was blessing them with forgiveness. But what I hadn't realised is that I was doing that very much with my ego. I was positioning myself as this big forgiver, who had the power to either forgive or withhold forgiveness. And I was doing this wonderful thing by forgiving, and isn't that marvelous of me? And yes, I'm forgiving you, and you can go away now. You're forgiven. And I was doing that, and I hadn't realized I was doing it because I was following the instructions of the course. So it took Holy Spirit to show me, this is forgiveness to destroy. You are not seeing them as innocent. You are not seeing them as innocent. You are seeing them as guilty, but actually you're the better person. So you're going to do the right thing and get and let them off the hook. You know, the kind of grand inquisitor character. And that I had not realised that it just wasn't available to my mind at all that I was doing that, until Holy Spirit came in and told me as much, very gently, but very urgently. There was an amazing urgency to the voice. There's an incredible resonance to Holy Spirit's voice. It's unmistakable. The ego can't mimic the Holy Spirit's voice once you're familiar with it. It's gentle and it's strong, but sometimes it can be urgent without being impatient. It can still be urgent, I've noticed. And there was an urgency to Holy Spirit. He'd had enough of my flim flam. It was time for him to step in. So I hope that answers your question, Catherine.
It does, and I'm so glad I asked, because I often reassure myself when I don't, I'm not having a clear result or feeling peace, that, you know what, I'm turning up and I'm allocating this time for devotion. And one of my favorite prayers is, God, speak through the clutter of my mind. And then I feel a confidence that, you know what, this clutter is not enough to keep God out. It's not enough to change the fact that I am part of who God created me at, I'm as God created me. And so I thought you were, saying something different there. So that, thank you.
Yeah, and I was showing up with all this clutter in my mind. And so it was sort of not doing the work, but nevertheless, it was doing the work, because it gave Holy Spirit the opportunity to come in after a while, because I was sitting there with an intention, and it gave if had I not done that, then Holy Spirit would not have had the opportunity to come in and say, thank you, Kirsty, but actually, let's steer it here. So I'm not suggesting that my time was wasted or in vain. I was just saying that I was opening myself up to be corrected by Holy Spirit. So thank you for pointing that out, Catherine.
I relate.
And that's a lovely prayer. Please, what is it? Please talk through the clutter of my mind.
The clutter of my mind. And then if you can just think, well, of course God can. Do you know what I mean? It's not enough to keep God out.
No, it absolutely isn't. It really isn't. The ego is nothing to God, but he just wants us to know that it should be nothing to us as well.
Okay, well, that's a good note to leave on. Thank you so much, Kirsty. That was wonderful. And take yourself off of mute and show your appreciation to Kirsty.
Thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you.
So very useful. Thank you.
Kirsty. Thank you,
Thank
Tracy and
you.
Dan.
Thank you.
Lots of love to everybody. Bye.
Thank you, and you.